Here's something I think all of us would like to see a lot more from in the Miami Hurricanes passing game this coming year.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday Eve. I'm Alex Donno, your host. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. Thank you to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch each and every day. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Talking some recruiting today, which means our guy Brian Smith is going to join us, and he is always brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Now, before we talk recruiting, I want to talk about something that Brian, I have felt the need in recent days because I've gotten so many comments about this on our Locked On Canes YouTube channel, so many comments about this on social media. You know, when I talk about Cam Ward working out with his wide receivers and the type of chemistry he's going to be building and is already building with Xavier Restrepo and Jacoby George and JoJo Trader, people keep asking me, Donno, what about the tight ends? Can we get the tight ends involved in the passing game? So I've got the stat, Brian, it's depressing, this stat from last year. There's a lot of reasons or excuses why Miami's tight ends weren't involved in the receiving game last year. But Miami's tight ends last season combined all season long for 18 receptions for 154 yards. That's also Greg Olsen used to do that sometimes in one game at Miami when he played at the U. That was Miami's entire tight end output. How can we get guys like Riley Williams, Cam McCormick, I don't know, primarily a blocker, but Riley Williams, Elijah Arroyo if healthy. How can Cam Ward and Shannon Dawson get these guys involved?
Well, I think part of it is you have to make it an emphasis. And I honestly wonder, because, and I wrote about Cam McCormick today at All Hurricanes, but it's interesting, his history. This is going to be his 9th year. I mean, he had a 4-year stretch where he played in like 2 games, like because of all the injuries he had. I think they worry about planning for him in a season because he's just been so banged up. And then last year, of course, the 2 freshmen, very talented, they were freshmen. And then Elijah Arroyo was coming off a really bad injury. Like they just didn't have a good combination. It was really horrible luck. This year, to my knowledge, I'll let you speak to this, Arroyo's in better health. McCormick, to my knowledge, is good to go, and freshmen become sophomores.
Right.
At the end of the year, if there's not 40 catches between the group, however it ends up, I think that would be disappointing. And honestly, it should probably be more. Now, I know Miami has a lot of good receivers. Don't get me wrong here. But the little dump-off passes, the waggles, the bootlegs, and all that stuff, I think they're going to be more active with it because we'll talk about Riley Williams here in a minute, but like, they just have more guys to do it and hopefully healthy versions of them. So I don't think we're going to see another season like that. And if we do, there needs to be serious questions because barring a bunch of injuries, again, the talent and experience have gone up way, way, way higher than they were last year.
Yeah, and on Riley Williams, number 88, former 4-star tight end out of IMG Academy. He did get on the field a lot last year and actually blocked pretty darn well. Just there weren't a whole lot of opportunities for him in the passing game, but he was fantastic at that in high school, right? I mean, he was a basketball player as well, really soft hands. I've watched him in practice, and at the time when Miami landed his commitment and when he signed with Miami last year, I was thinking, and I haven't changed my mind on this, I still think he can be like the next great tight end U guy at Miami. What did you see for Riley when you covered him at IMG?
He was at the Future 50 event. I saw him playing games, etc. There are 2 things that stood out about him. You mentioned one. Hands are natural. Some guys kind of catch everything close to him. They're not sure. He's a guy that moves around kind of like, I'm not saying he's JoJo in terms of his hand-eye coordination, but it's very natural. And it's also something that he would do in traffic. He didn't really matter to him, which as a tight end is pretty much a prerequisite. The other thing is ironic. He's a little bit like a quarterback or a center, a little more subdued, a more reserved personality, very mature kid. When you're talking to him on the record, off the record, etc., he's one of those people that takes in the information, calculates it, and then spits out an answer. Not your typical 16 to 20-year-old, to be quite frank. And guys like that don't normally, like Jeremy Shockey's an extreme of extremes personality-wise, but he's not even a little bit. He's just a quiet guy. Doesn't necessarily fit that, but I bet you he's also the guy that nobody wants to deal with, because when he ran routes, he's not like a burner or anything. He's not the athlete that Shockey was, if you are, but he always found a way to make a guy get off his balance and turn guys around. And guys that were running 4.5, pure safety corner guys, he could beat them. He's just so intelligent. When you put his mentality together with his physical skills, he's a guy I think is going to be a third down money player for Miami at some point, and probably going to start this year being because rollouts and stuff to him. He's going to catch the ball. Now he's had a full year, another year in the strength program. He's going to be able to be faster and stronger too. He could end up being Miami's best tight end before this season's over.
Now, Miami's got a really good true freshman coming in, Elijah Lofton. You probably covered him, if not in person. You probably saw him at some camps, though, because he was out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, which is a program Miami's trying to turn into a pipeline somehow.
Everybody wants to
They keep landing and going after players from Bishop Gorman. How do you think Elijah Lofton, if he can maybe factor into Miami's rotation this year?
I think he will be the smaller version of what McCormick is in some ways, because they use Cam a lot as a blocker, as an H-back / kind of like a fullback almost. Elijah's not as big. He's 6'1", 6'2", but he played receiver, H-back, fullback, pure tight end. He's the most versatile high school player in the country from this class in terms of like where he lined up. Natural hands, very physical guy. He blocks well outside. He can do those things like Cam did, but he's just a better athlete. I don't think that Miami is going to mind. And again, he played at a tremendous high school program. 2 years ago, they were the only team to beat Chaminade. What's that tell you? I think, and they smoked him. I think that he's going to come in a little bit more mentally prepared. I flat out know that Miami is super, super high on him, like higher than the recruiting rankings. I'm going to be surprised. Like Shannon Dawson is very high on him. And his offense you could put Cam at the tight end spot. Put Arroyo in the hip, as they call it, at H-back, do different things, do motions, and get guys out leverage. And then his athleticism, he'll take the ball up your head. Most fullback H-back guys can't catch very well. It's like, please just catch this, don't fumble it, and get the first down. He'll make a guy miss. He'll run by somebody. They used him as a pure receiver in some senses at his high school. It's a rare player. So he's going to find his way on the field. I just don't know how many different packages that we'll use him in, because at the end of the day, you still have to be able to be in it, not necessarily an elite blocker off the bat, but he's got to be pretty good at it, because Miami's going to run downhill. And for those play actions to the fullback and the tight end to work, that's part of it. If he does that well early, look out, because all the receiving stuff and all the position flexibility makes Arroyo really, really important. And now you got this kid too. Like those guys, I think they're both playing. Arroyo, I really hope he's healthy. Let me be clear on that, because he deserves that chance. He was a hell of an athlete coming out of Texas. If you can get somebody else to do it too, and even if he's a freshman, Miami's tight end room is going to flip all the way to the other side compared to the 18 catches for 154 yards last year.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb. Bold prediction, Miami will have more than 18 combined catches from the tight ends this season.
I'm going 40. I hope that I hope it's 18 by the end of September, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I hope it's 18 after like 2.5 games in, if not 2 games into the season. I would not mind that whatsoever. But folks, we have a lot of recruiting to get to. Brian Smith, our network recruiting expert, he's also my colleague at allhurricanes.com, is with us. You guys know here on Locked On Canes, we talk about certain players as must-gets in this cycle, or at least borderline must-gets. I got to ask Brian about a couple of my favorite defensive backs, DJ Pickett and Chris Ewald. Want to talk about one of my favorite wide receivers. Cortez Mills has locked in a Miami Hurricanes official visit for this summer. Folks, we have so much coming up on this brand new episode. You want to keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. And I know you're keeping it locked to eBay Motors, my friends. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making this Recruiting Overlord episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. And guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're checking out the channel Locked On Sports Today. This network, Locked On, has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming sports YouTube channel. National experts who cover every league, local experts like myself who cover every team. We're all over Locked On Sports Today. Again, 24/7. We do not sleep at Locked On Sports Today. There's always something on. Check it out on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. We're joined here by recruiting overlord Brian Smith, who's also my colleague at allhurricanes.com. So Brian, every year I develop show favorites, right? And I'm pretty good with the show favorites. I was a huge fan of Samson Okunlola, who Miami landed. Ruben Bain obviously was a big time show favorite of ours. We had our favorites. Justin Scott was a favorite of ours in this last cycle. Miami landed. A couple of my favorites in this cycle, defensive backs, because that's an area of emphasis for Miami in 2025 recruiting. DJ Pickett, Hurricanes legacy out of Zephyr Hills High School in the Tampa area. Chris Ewald, 4-star defensive back out of Chaminade. Where does Miami stand with these defensive back targets?
I think Miami is either at the top for Pickett right now or right there with LSU, maybe Oregon. His list is a little bit different. Georgia's certainly in there as well. But from talking to a few people here in the last week or so, it's pretty close. Here's the interesting part. Miami just brought in a new DBs coach. How are they going to recruit him, use him? Yeah, Shevis Jackson was a guy, it's ironic. He was at LSU as a player, and that's one of the schools that DJ's really taken a hard look at. He recently visited Baton Rouge. You have him. How is he going to coach him? Would he prefer him at safety or corner? That's something I need.
Yeah, I've got something on that real quick. I don't know that this might have been put out there before Jackson's hiring was finalized, but probably was already kind of known he was the guy. D Money at Canes Insight, who usually has really good information, mentioned that Miami probably prefers DJ Pickett as a corner more so than a safety. Does that line up with what you've seen from him?
Well, it's the weirdest thing. I ran into Booker Pickett the other day at the Under Armour event in Orlando, and because his brother Cannon is a player, and he comes and I said, how's it going, DJ? And have you talked to him lately? Blah, blah, just small talk. And
yeah,
I said, Booker's at least 6'3.5", and he said, "There's no doubt about it. DJ is definitely taller than me now."
Really?
And I'm like, holy crap! Because I was with DJ recently. I'm just around him enough. I don't think anything about it, but I mean, he's really tall, and he said he's at least 6'4", right? Like he's at least 6'4". And I watched DJ. Yeah, I know. And I watched DJ. Nobody will throw at him. I can't get any film of him.
Yeah.
Like nobody can. They just were on the other side. And California Power, who he plays for, every kid that starts on that defense is going to play big time football. There is no freebies. So they wouldn't throw it. The only video clip I got was worthwhile. He played offense for one play and he scored. Shocker.
For one play.
For one play and he scored. He made the kid look bad. He turned the kid around and he ran a slant and scored. But anyway, I think that the idea now is if he doesn't work out a corner, we can always move him to free safety. So you can take it like Corey Raymond I ran into last year at a game. DJ was even there. He was at UF. Now he's at LSU. He says, I think DJ is the best player in the 25 class in Florida. I'm like, yeah, well, that's not. I agree. And he said, I think he can play corner. And I'm like, holy cow. I was just thinking about it because I'd always told DJ, hey, I think eventually you'll outgrow corner. You'll play safety.
Yeah.
He didn't care. He doesn't care. He's a one-word guy. Just, okay, whatever. Everything just kind of rolls off his back. He's a very quiet kid. But he's playing corner, and he's still lining up with guys that are 5'10" to 6 foot and hanging with them. And his length is ridiculous. I call him the spider because of his arms are so long. I think he's going to try that with any school like LSU. I know Corey will. If he goes to LSU, Corey's going to play him at corner. It sounds like Miami is too. So the rarest of the rare, man. Like there's just nobody that big that plays corner and is any good at it. But he's a really rare athlete. So if I would try him at it, no matter where he went, if I was a DB coach, because if you got a 6'4" corner, it changes your defense.
Speaking of corners, what about Chris Ewald from Chaminade? What's the latest on his recruitment? I know Miami's heavily after this player.
He might be their number one target, in my opinion. I don't know how Mario has it in all of South Florida. Number one, they need corners. David Lake wrote an article about this recently. Miami, for whatever reason, part of it's the SEC schools coming down and getting them, just haven't gotten the elite corners, even out of South Florida in the last decade. David did a good job like going through a list and talking about it. Ewald fits the profile. I don't give a you-know-what about what he's ranked. I've seen him enough, watched enough of his film. He's played against the top competition at Chaminade, top 10 corner. But his list, I've got it up here on the screen. He's got Miami the 8th of March. He's got LSU on March 9th, Auburn March 19th, A&M March 23rd, Tennessee April 6th for unofficials. One of those is not like the other four, and that's 4 SEC schools. That gives me a little pause, and he's going back like Tennessee's a school that's trending with him, etc. He was previously committed to Michigan. He's a little more open to leaving than what a lot of South Florida kids are. Like he's just a different kind of kid. I'm curious to see what this ends up being like because this might be a all the way to signing day kind of deal, which is typical of South Florida kids, but it puts Mario in a bad spot. You have to take him, no matter when he wants to come. I get it.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, he's a big time player. But they can't miss on this. And how does that impact other recruits? It's just the life and death of recruiting in South Florida. If you're Miami, it's all in or all out. I think his commitment, a lot of people expect him to go to Miami. I'm just worried for the Canes. Will he scare off somebody else? Because they'll get at least one other good corner. But they really could use 3 in this class if they could get him. If you don't get him on signing day, it's just awkward. I don't know how that works. And do you take 3 and take him 2? Pickett's one of them. He's the wild card of all. I'll speak for Mario. Yes. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't know who else they would covet more than him in South Florida as a corner. There's a few others, but they cannot lose him. And the SEC's really got his attention.
Well, another one Miami really covets is Ben Hanks Jr., 4-star corner. At a Booker T. Washington. Now, this one I saw Gabby at 24/7 actually put Hanks in his mock class to Miami that he put out this week, and that pissed off a lot of Florida fans because his dad played at Florida. But how have you seen Ben Hanks's recruitment going so far?
Well, I've seen him as a sophomore. Saw him last year at the Canes camp. I've seen him play this spring. Everything I've been told is Miami's in a pretty dang good spot. The Florida thing gives me pause about what I've been, and I haven't asked Ben in the last 6. I've talked to him directly, but I trust the people around more than kids are savvy about how they talk about this, especially because who his dad is. I get it. Yeah. I get it. He's going to be educated on it, do interviews, which is good. Miami, Florida battles for a public school kid almost always goes UM's way, but his dad's a legacy. I don't know how you read that, and he's got offers from everybody, and he's extremely well coached. Ice Harris being the coach down there and all that stuff. He's another kid that can play free safety if you wanted him to, but he's a long corner. Miami's in a pretty good spot. I think he's the second best corner in South Florida next to Ewald. You could make the argument he's better, depends on who you want to talk to. But I think he's a really good player. I'm going to pick Miami here, and if Florida fans want to jump on that,
wow.
They can. But Miami, and I'm not picking on UF, but they've got a ton of talent in their secondary, and it is hard. It makes your eyes want to bleed to watch their secondary, how bad it is. And they got a ton of talent. So unless they turn things around, and UF is going to be a train wreck this year, I'm convinced of it. And then the final point, I think Miami will go to Gainesville and win that opening game. I think all of that, with him being a Miami kid now, he lives in Miami, will give the Canes the edge.
I love it. Well, I want to talk about some offensive players when we come back. I mentioned one of my favorite receivers, Cortez Mills from Homestead. He's locked in an official visit to Miami. Miami's been trending for big-time offensive linemen. So let's keep it locked right here, my friends. We are not done yet. The recruiting overlord is with us on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. I already know you're keeping it locked to FanDuel. We're winning money We're having a great time. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Now, my Miami moneyline bet against Duke did not hit last night, but I'm going to try to get it back when the Miami Heat are back in action tomorrow. And there are so many great NBA plays you can have at FanDuel. Guys, you get $150 if your first bet wins. You can bet on all your favorites, NBA teams and players, with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props. I love my props on Jaime Jaquez Jr., on Bam Adebayo, all my favorite Heat players. There's so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For the everydayers, if you want to take your everydayer experience to the next level, sign up for our exclusive Locked On Canes Insiders chat. I include the link in the show description below. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours, even though there's been this crazy AT&T outage today. Like I still found a way to text the insiders this morning. I was mostly complaining about my AT&T outage, but I still found a way to make it happen. So check it out. Link in the show description below. Give you guys recruiting updates, breaking news on Miami. You can ask me one-on-one questions on there. Try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value there on Locked On Canes Insiders. Click that link in the show description below. Brian Smith is with us, a recruiting overlord. Brian, very happy to see that Cortez Mills, 4-star wide receiver out of Homestead, has locked in an official visit this summer to Miami. That's OV season, June 21st to June 23rd. I know Florida, Florida State, Texas A&M, and others are very active in his recruitment. Where do you feel like Miami stands with Cortez Mills?
I think they're at the top, but here's the caveat with that. That high school, South Florida in general, we both know it's volatile with recruiting. Kids go all over. And I'm looking at his visit list now. It's a hodgepodge. It kind of, in a way, is not shocking for a South Florida kid. First visit, Clemson, May 31st. He's going to Florida, June 7th, not shocker. Nebraska, June 14th. That does surprise me. And then Miami, the last of the 4, on June 21st. As a reminder for fans, it's no longer just 5 visits. You get unlimited. He could technically move those around and or take more, blah, blah, blah. But 4 weekends in a row, kids are usually just wore out. I like Miami's chances long-term, but his list is kind of bizarre. The one visit out of that gives me the most pause is Clemson. They do a tremendous job with visits, and they don't recruit Florida as hard as they used to. But at the same time, when they do, it's a pretty good sign they have a shot. I'd watch that visit, and he's got a bunch of unofficials, Miami included, as well, for the unofficial season right now, getting ready with spring ball. Let's see if he comes more than once. I mean, he's in Homestead. He's 30 minutes from UM's campus in traffic. And as you unfortunately well know, but he's right down. Yeah, it's right down the road from UM. If they can get him on campus more than once this spring, go by what they do, not what they say in recruiting. If he voluntarily goes up more than once, I think that Miami's doing a pretty good job, and I would continue to put them at the top. Right now, I think they're the most likely for everything I've heard. But watch the Clemson visit and see who else he goes this spring.
With Cristobal and Mirabal, there's always an emphasis on recruiting offensive linemen. And I think, one area where Miami's done a good job in the transfer portal, not as good of a job with players coming out of high school, is center. Nino Francavilla is an interesting player, but in the previous site, like they had Connor Liu committed and he flipped to Auburn, and that was the blue chip center that they really wanted and missed out on. And here's a player that I think can play center, interior offensive lineman who has been crystal balled to Miami out of Bishop Gorman in Vegas, Seuseu Alofaituli, who's interior offensive lineman. I think he could project to be a blue chip center. Brian, do you? Again, a couple of crystal ball predictions from 24/7, Tom Loy and Gabby Urrutia. Do you think Miami's the favorite here? And have you had a chance to watch this player?
I saw him last summer, and he was a dominant player at Future 50 in Bradenton. They brought these kids from all over the country. He plays, again, this is another kid from Gorman, tremendous athlete. He has the ability to move his feet and play kind of like a tackle. They one-on-ones. He's at a disadvantage. He's not the long arm 6'7" guy. He's 6'2", 6'3", but he's also a kid that is just sound fundamentally, and he was really, really good. So I even had one of my buddies that's an O-line trainer watch him. He's like, yeah, he's the goods. But he's a powerful kid that's still got some upside. He was 280 something. I think he's the perfect build, temperament, technique, where he's played everything to play center. I think he's got a pro future, and I don't say that about O-linemen very often because it's a hard position to project. This young man is one of them. Miami, when multiple crystal balls come in, it's usually for somebody tipped them off.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this isn't, because nobody lives in Vegas that is a scout that I know of. Like, nobody lives there because there's only one program anybody follows. So nobody's going to go out there and live. But for that to happen, something happened. Miami has recruited that school, as you noted earlier, so very hard. It's a good sign for the Canes.
Another offensive lineman I know Miami really likes, and he's going to be making an unofficial visit in March during spring football, is four-star offensive tackle Jaelyne Matthews.
That's right.
He's a former Penn State commit. Now it seems like Georgia is the trend leader here. This kid's out of Toms River, New Jersey. What have you been hearing about Jaelyne Matthews?
Well, I actually had spoken to somebody on the Penn State side about this a while back. Like, everybody wanted him. Yeah. This is a kid that can pick up the phone and pretty much, if you want to go to Texas today or whatever, have a feeling it would be okay. The question is it just because he wants to play in the SEC? Like, they took 6 O-linemen at Georgia last year. Yeah. So this UGA thing surprised me. Yeah. Like, how many can you take? They took like 3 tackles. So I'm a little bit less likely to see him go to Georgia maybe than some others, and it's early. Let's see what the Miami visit does. Miami, not that they didn't have O-linemen in the last class, but it's a 23 group that everybody talks about. Maui Noah, etc. I think they're going to have a better chance than some other people think. And they've always done pretty well recruiting that area. I don't know why, but the Northeast right there, they've done pretty good when they get in a key player. If he takes the visit as he's supposed to, I think Miami is a major player. I just think Georgia's depth chart is like ridiculous, and more power to any O-lineman that wants to go in and compete with that, by all means.
Sure.
But it's going to be a little like Big Maui is going to be a 3-and-out kid. Okunwola still could if he gets healthy after his injury. Miami needs tackles. So I think it's a pretty easy sell. Let's see what happens with that before we judge too much further.
Awesome stuff here as always from Brian Smith. Remember, every time Brian joins us, he's brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I've gotten jobs through LinkedIn Jobs before. I know it works. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Brian does a fantastic job on this network. You guys are actually going to see me with Brian on Locked On Seminoles, talking about the rivalry, talking some recruiting. So it's been a busy day for us both here on the Locked On Network. I cannot wait for that. Brian, thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure you and I will also have some more stories for the people later today at allhurricanes.com. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much.
Love it. We'll talk to everyone again next time. By the way, I think we're going to have a double episode tomorrow. Going to do Q&A in the morning. And I've already booked an interview with a Pro Football Focus analyst who's going to talk about Miami's players, former players at the scouting combine and how they project. So that'll give us some more material for the website as well, Brian. So it's going to be a busy one again here on Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.